All right. Thank you so much for meeting with me today, Maria. So, just a little brief intro. The intention of this interview is just to kind of learn about you as a personal training and nutrition coaching client of mine. I think your story is super interesting. It's been so fun to get to train you and like walk alongside you on this journey. And you've had some really awesome wins in the time that I've known you. So I hope that, people who are watching this can just be inspired by your story and also give folks a little bit of insight about how I operate and what I do as a coach, because I think for a lot of people it's sort of mysterious, right? Like, what does a coach do and how can they help me? And I'm scared to talk to them. you know so welcome, Maria. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you? Obviously tell us your name, how old you are if you're willing to share,
Yeah.
and then maybe some of like the goals that you came to me with and kind of what started off your journey in coaching and in training.
Well, my name is Maria del Carmen Gonzalez, and I am 37. And we started, I believe, a year and a half ago, maybe,
Sounds
or
about right.
so. Yeah, and it. I first, I was getting to the point in my aerials practice where I wanted to get better, and I was done with my basic stuff. And one day I was recording myself and watching the video as you do when you practice, just to feel like, see how you're doing and what you can do better. And when I was watching myself, I realized that it wasn't looking all that effortless as some of my teachers. And, I just felt the need that I just need to, maybe start working out in just to make it a little bit more effortless when I practice. And that first triggered me to like, oh, let's look into this. And I had never worked out before in my life. I trained volleyball when I was in high school, but I had not done anything physical since. And I used to also have a cleaning business that kept me kind of active, but I had at the time switched jobs into an office job, and I was not working out at all, and I could feel it in my aerials practice as well. So that led me to reach out to you, and I was glad you took me on and told you what my goal was, to be stronger, to basically just show up for my aerials practice in a stronger body and more endurance when I practice. And that's how how we started.
Love it. Yes. For those folks that are watching this who might not really know that much about aerial arts, can you just give us a little brief description of what you do with aerial fabrics and kind of maybe what your training has looked like and your experience there?
Where aerial arts are, there are many different apparatuses, but I was starting with silks, and it requires a lot of climbing, holding yourself in the air for a lot of times. You need flexibility for sure, but most you need a lot of strength in your core and your back and your shoulders. And it's a lot of pulling yourself up or bringing yourself off upside down a lot of the times. And the longer you can stay up in the air, the better, the more you can practice. And yeah, that's that's
Yeah,
kind of.
it's very physically challenging.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. I know because I am fairly new to the aerial world myself. But as you know, when Kelly Smiley, who was the founder of Tile Flow Arts, and I kind of brought our businesses together, our whole intention was that we recognized that my people needed what she had and her people needed what I had, you know, and we were trying to figure out how to bring those two worlds together. So I think you're such a great representation of that, you know? So since you've put in a lot of time and effort and work in the gym and done this, how has your aerial practice transformed, if at all?
Well, a lot. I well, first I started noticing, oh, I'm stronger here, and I could obviously, whenever I did my open gyms and practiced on my own, I was able to be up in the air for twice as long and more, as I progressed. And so that was really neat. I could, take advantage of um a full hour of training. That was awesome. And then also, when I was learning new tricks, that too, as you're learning, you're sometimes in the middle of it and you're stopping because you don't know what's next. And if you're not really when you're stronger, that's a lot easier. So I was, and I was able to give it more tries while I'm trying to accomplish a sequence, or it started looking more effortless. Indeed.
Yeah.
And it really made more room for me to practice and focus on other things about my aerial practice. There aren't, like, that's not a worry I have anymore, like, oh, being able to physically perform. Now it's more like polishing, like keeping my toes pointed, or like I can focus on other things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That like ease and flow that you're talking about, obviously Tahoe Flow is named for that specifically. I love that sort of double meaning because flow arts is its own discipline, of course, or has its own disciplines. But to me, flow is like flow state, like where you're in that creative space where things just, it's like time and space stops and nothing else matters. And you're just, you're in the right place. And when you're physically strong and able to like it, I love how you said it made more space for you to focus on other things. And I think for a lot of
Mhm.
folks, that's true of habit building across the board. When you're not having to always think about all these little behavior changes or training things that you need to do, all of a sudden it creates more space for creativity, for being in that flow state. It just feels better.
Yes. Yeah, completely.
So it's like
Yeah,
you do that
that's
work on the front end, right? So that you can have that on the back end. So I just love that you said that. What about in other areas of your life? Did you find that it did that in other areas outside of
oh,
aerial?
definitely. I love snowboarding, for instance, and when before we started training, it used to take me a while to get back on, my mm, snowboarding for as long as I wanted, or maybe on a powder day show up and just do it. Like, I was not there. I needed several days, which I know not always had in a season, to build it up. So I would typically be strong enough by almost towards the end of a season. And that was a bummer, that pay for a pass and then show up for an hour and then be tired, and it was, yeah. So, and now it's been way more fun, for me to be able to go for a day, and as long as I want, and multiple hours, and I'm like, yay, and I still have fun, and it's way more fun now, with that. And I don't need a whole, like, 2 months to warm up into it. I can just go right into it day one. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I
um,
love that. I know you and I have talked about that
mhm.
before, and I've had that same experience with training, like to be able to just show up on the mountain on day one and like ride like you never left off last season
Yeah,
is the best feeling.
totally. Yes, exactly. Like, I don't know, maybe you before, I didn't use my legs as much, so obviously I would lose a lot of strength in them, the whole year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And I've had that experience with other sports and things too, like whether it was softball or roller derby or whatever it is, like having that training regimen just makes it so much easier to put your skates back on, or if you want to go snowshoeing or whatever. I mean, you just
Yes.
you're not held back by like, oh, can I do that?
Yes. Yeah, I'm also not scared anymore of like my boyfriend, he's hardcore like active person, and going on hikes together, stuff like that. In the past I would be like, very hesitant to go with him anywhere because I knew his level was, not mine, and it would create just not a fun time, and now I'm not afraid of going, That's
Yeah.
another. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great point because it affects the quality time that you spend with others, right? So
Hmm.
your story is very similar to what I hear from a lot of other clients, and this can look a lot of different ways for other folks. It could be like, well, I have an 8-year-old son and he's like better at snowboarding than I am now, right? So like I want to be able to keep up with him.
Yes, exactly.
Those type
Yeah,
of
keeping
things.
up. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, or like signing up for things. I know you've been taking some pretty hard aerial classes lately too. I know you're doing that rope class with Alicia.
Yes,
And just feeling like you can hang in those things. It,
yes.
it just makes life
Yeah,
better.
yeah. I do have that, I can take a workshop and not be too afraid of like, oh, it's just gonna be like too much for me. Like I'm not, gonna be able to do, and now I'm focusing more on my technical skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it sounds like just having confidence
Yes.
is a big part of
Yeah.
it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Love that. So as far as I know, we've talked about the training. All right, let's keep on the training because I have a couple like fun little questions for you on that, and then we'll kind of switch gears and talk a little bit about nutrition. Um, when you came to me, I remember specifically you were telling me, I played volleyball and I do aerial, but I haven't really done any cross training. Was there like what were some of the fears perhaps that were going through your head before we started training, like with exercise? Were you worried about doing any particular exercises, or were you like really excited about doing certain things? Like what did it feel like in the beginning?
Oh, well. At first, I don't know, my body, I've always been um a little bit stronger on my core and my upper body in general, and my legs have not been, either pushed in this the training, the style, and it all, and like aerials too. It's not that hard on your legs, even though it does help to have strong legs because then you balance out. But um, I had depended on my upper body strength a lot in many ways. And when I began, I was like hating on the legs stuff, and really was the hardest for me to, and I could tell.
But what
And
about
yet,
now? How does that feel now?
oh, it's amazing. Like I mean, not only I've gained strength, but also my entire life. I don't know if I am allowed to say this, but I never had a butt. Never was not, and I totally gave up on that. I kind of like just accepted that, oh, I'm never gonna have a butt, and, and no, not at all. And first thing you told me was like, well, that the glutes are one of the biggest muscles, so you can actually, work that part of your body. And at first I was like, yeah,
Sure, whatever.
sure, but you don't know my body. Like my body, it's just this way. But no, it did change, and I love it. Like, not only my legs are definitely stronger, and I am able to do like probably twice as much as I when I started, but yeah, it feels nice. Like
Right? Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
yeah.
I everybody when they come to me, they always like oftentimes folks want to spot train, right? And we know in the fitness world that like you can't really spot train, right? Like a lot of the times when, especially for women, they're always like, this part of my body or this part of my body, I don't like this, I don't like that. And
Yeah.
often you can have aesthetic changes, right, over time, but it's going to be unique to you because we are all genetically different. And honestly, it oftentimes is like, well, if this is for me, it's my under, it always was like my lats. I just have big lats. So like my bra fat, right? I was like, oh, it's never gonna go away. Honestly, the more muscle I build, I just get bigger lats and it looks bigger. So but it's just a reframing, right, of like, well, I'm strong there, like that's where my muscles are, that's a part of who I am, and I love it now. But the butt, man, I'm telling you, it is really, it's one thing that you can grow a butt, like.
I was stoked. I was like, oh my God. Like out of all things, even my boyfriend has complimented, I'm like, oh wow. Like
Yeah, nobody's going to be
thank you
sad about having a more shapely behind, right? I love that.
Totally.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note too that, the strength part and the quality of life part is so huge. I mean, that is really what we train for. The aesthetic piece is an amazing, awesome bonus, right?
Yes,
But
yes.
oftentimes folks come to me with the opposite intentions, right? They come to me and they think, well, I want to change my body aesthetically. And then they start to see all the other benefits. And then it becomes almost an afterthought. So they go hand in hand. It's not a sad thing to have. So
Totally.
thank you for sharing all that with the training. I know it can feel, especially, for someone who's an aerialist and coming from that world, or if you've never done cross training before, it can be intimidating. I mean, folks look at in the weight room and they're like, oh, like what's going on over there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not that scary, right? Like once you
No.
kind of get your foot in the door and you get into that world, it's just like in your aerial classes, I imagine, where you're like, okay, I'm starting to become a part of this community. And
Mm-hmm.
the people that are walking into the weight room now as well as into the aerial studio. So I think that's really cool
Yes.
too.
Yeah, I mean in both we have so many different people, at least I can speak for my friends doing aerials. We all have different such different personalities, different backgrounds, Some people come from like more of a dancer, some people come from more of a gymnast, some people are more of cheerleading. I mean, whatever, you name it,
Hmm.
it's everything that kind of lead us our curiosity into aerials, and aerials are so much fun. And you can be also a little more cautious, or you can be like fearless and just enjoy spinning upside down, and it doesn't matter, like everybody, it really, everybody can practice.
Yeah.
It doesn't,
There's
yeah.
a space for everybody and everybody.
Exactly.
Love it. Love it. So let's talk a little bit about nutrition. So when you and I first started working together, you dove right in, and I have to give you like a lot of credit for that because and it's okay. Sometimes people like to dip their toe in the water of one or the other first, and they want to see what it's all about. But you're like, I'm going for it. I want to do the nutrition piece. And, I'm sure I had the conversation with you of like, look, we can do a lot of great work in the gym, but if we can get this piece as well, it's going to be a game changer. What motivated
Yeah.
you to take on nutrition coaching as well?
Well, I never dieted really in my life. I always ate whatever I wanted, and um kind of like um fluctuate, I had same as everybody, I think. We all like through the year, have holidays, and then so I was already feeling like I ate somewhat healthy because my boyfriend is very healthy conscious, and he's all about healthy meals and lots of veggies, and just trying to stay healthy. And I love that aspect of about how does it make me feel, because I have gone the other extreme too. For when I was in college, I had a whole winter where I just ate junk food to see how I felt, because that's me, you know.
You had to find out.
I just had to find out for myself, because my mom raised me too very strict about my food, and like she's also very healthy cautious, and I mean not dieting, but just that's too much oil, or you know, nah, that's the she would never buy junk food in the house anyway. So I had to go the other extreme on my own, and realize how icky I ended up feeling after 3 months of just eating, you know, junk food, eh, day after day, and in sodas and whatever. And my body changed a little bit, but it was more like just feeling slow and like sluggish. So that kind of cured me. I got it out of my system, and then I went back to like just eating normal, for me normal, you know. And
Mhm,
when I started with you, I was intrigued, like kind of curious to see like, oh well, let's see how this feels.
mhm.
And it kept going, you know. That's kind of how I
You're like, oh,
like you
it
were,
gets better.
I mean, you know, yeah, why not? You know,
Yeah.
yeah, you were giving me suggestions, and I, you know, out of all of it, I was very open minded and like, okay, let's see, let's see. And it kept, you know, it was just very minimal changes, little by little, that had made me feel better even than I was already. And I was like, huh. And then I started seeing my body to change a little bit and feeling even better. So it's like, oh, it all kept, you know, feeling good. So wanted to keep going.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, you know, I kept making small adjustments,
Yeah, but you
it,
were not without setbacks on the process either.
oh no,
Tell
no,
us
not at
about
all.
some of those, like things that you felt
No.
like were setbacks and how you overcame those.
Well, I have a few things in my life that are not the healthiest things, and that I love. Like I love beer, you know, I love really, really good beer, and I enjoy, you know, a microbrewery, like really nice, you know,
And you
beer.
guys are
I really
foodies too. You love to go out to eat.
we love to go out to eat, and you know, we love seafood. We just, yeah, it's a thing. And it wasn't, I wouldn't call it a setback, because I think it's all normal, you know. You gotta also at times give yourself some slack, and not be counting calories, you know, all the time. Like it 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 was impressive for me that when those times came, you know, when holidays came, or a trip, you know, where I wasn't even like putting in my all my workouts, you know, but I was just staying
You're
active, but
maintaining.
just not
Yeah.
working out.
Mhm.
I told you, like I came back from the trip, and I was like, I ate everything, and I
And I was like,
and I
good.
didn't feel like I didn't work out. And I mean, I went on a hike here and there, but I didn't, you
Oh,
know, I
that's when you
totally
went to
dropped
Peru,
the
right?
ball. But yes, when I went
Mhm.
to Peru, and I was like, I totally dropped the ball. I'm ready for the my body to like, you know, and it wasn't the case. Like
When
my
we
body
did your
had
body
changed.
composition, yeah, it didn't change
Yes,
much, right?
yes. No, it was very surprising. I was like, what?
Right. And
No.
in the past, and you spoke to this a little bit earlier, your experience was that you had big fluctuations when you
Yeah.
had things like
Oh
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was another thing too. Is I told you before I went, Peru is a very high carb type of diet there. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna come back, and this is all gonna be super bad. Because I heard
Potatoes and
the
rice, right? Potatoes and
potatoes and
rice.
rice all the way through, and that was what I ate my entire life: potatoes and rice, and something in the protein. But you know, it was three quarters potatoes and rice.
Right. So a big part of like what I teach is just about how you build your plate, right? So like you
Yes.
were able to take the habits that you had built and apply them. And even if they weren't perfect, you know, even through holidays or through trips or whatever, all of a sudden, so it's like it's a twofold thing. I know we've talked about this before. It's like, okay, you've built these habits, you're building your plates. Well, at least you're putting the protein and the veggies first, and the carbs can be there. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
Um, especially when you're
Yeah.
traveling, right? You want to enjoy those things. You don't want to
Yeah.
feel like, I can't have this. But
Hmm.
then the other piece of it is you had put in the work in the gym, you had created body composition change for yourself. You had quite a bit more
Hmm.
muscle, which is more
Yes.
metabolically active. You're going to get away with more, you know, because
Yeah.
you
I
had
was
done,
shocked.
yeah, because you had created that body composition change. And so how long were you in Peru for?
2 weeks.
Yeah. So you
Yeah.
went on vacation for 2 weeks, you did the best you could. You weren't micromanaging anything. I don't think you were food journaling or doing anything like that. You
No.
just relied on the habits that you
Mhm.
built and the muscle that you built, and you came back and things hadn't changed much, and then you got back on track.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
Yes, that was one of my biggest shocks, and I was really stoked too that that was,
Right.
'cause yeah, I went back in the gym. I was still strong. I mean, I might have not been right back on the cardio because that always takes a minute to
Hmm.
come back. But yeah, for the
Yeah.
most part, it's really good.
All right, I love that. Like, just that kind of answered the question I was going to ask you, which was like what was one of the most surprising things that you learned with the nutrition is so that kind of answers that. Is there any other like big takeaways? It could be from nutrition, it could be from training. Like, what are a couple other things maybe that one or two other things that you're like, wow, I learned this and it was awesome. Like, and you want other people to know.
Well, I what you mentioned, I learned about my portions. That was massive for me, to learn ideally, how much is a portion of protein, and how, like, what to aim for when I'm building my plate, and also, yeah, how important it is to have more protein in my life, which I didn't know. I had no clue. And greens, I knew, everybody knows greens are good, but yeah, how important it is to have enough protein, and also not look at fats and carbs as demons. Just there are differences in carbs too, and in fats.
Right. And you
That
need them all. It's just the
yes,
way you use
and
them, right? That matters.
exactly, totally, totally. I mean, I that was another big life changing thing for me, has been like how I had no idea that, how much of what I was eating. And now, whenever I feel like, oh, I need to really get real with my nutrition, I can do food journaling, and that's also another habit that helps. It helps a lot, and for me at least, it's really great, to really see, like, because I have a lot of guilt tripping in my head, and I tend to sometimes, like, over guilt trip in what I ate. And then when I put it on the journal, I'm like, well, I mean, I'm not doing that bad.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
When we let
yeah.
those like stories kind of get out of control in our brain, it can feel
Hmm.
overwhelming. But when we take a step back and we
Hmm.
look at those things like objective data, and we
Yeah.
remove the emotion from it, and we go,
Hmm.
what can I learn from this? It all of a
Hmm.
sudden becomes much more manageable, I think, for a lot of folks.
Hmm.
And also,
Yes.
like, did I ever shame you for anything you ever brought in your food journal? Yeah, no. And you're like,
No.
wow, I think a lot of people think like my coach is going to be some sort of mean drill sergeant and just make me feel even worse about myself. And sometimes people think they want that. But then I'm like, no, you don't want that. Like, and I'm not
No.
that coach either.
No, not at all. I mean, I've been really, telling you, whenever popcorn is my crack. And, here and there, I go to the movies and I go through a big bag of popcorn.
Yeah. And we
In
make
that,
it work. We make it fit.
yeah.
It's all good. So we all have those things. Awesome, Maria. Thank you so much for sharing that. I just want to know before we wrap things up, like, what's next for you? Where are you going with this? What are you going to do with all of this?
Well, I really appreciate you showing me these charts of, like, body composition changes and how it can be attain, at each one. And my goal right now is to get to one notch less body fat percentage and increase, my muscle mass, and in that, as I'm doing that, and also, just be strong for my practice, because I'm still in aerials, and I actually it keeps getting better. So yeah, I'm really pumped, and that is my goal right now. I'm getting married, so I also want to look good, like, just a little more lean in the, in the wedding. But yeah, mostly is that body composition, and I want to reach just a notch more. I know I need to tighten things up, and from there, I think I will be good to stay, just try to maintain after that.
Love
Hmm.
it. Yep. It's gonna be
Yeah.
fun. We got a little bit of work to do. We're gonna make you look amazing at your wedding and feel amazing. And you're
Thank
performing
you.
at your wedding too, which is
Yes,
gonna be really
yes,
cool.
yep,
Super looking forward to that.
yep.
And well, thank you so much for taking the time to share some of your story with us.
Mhm.
And I hope that if it's okay with you, I'll tag you when I post this. And if people have questions, is it okay if they ask questions of you?
Oh yeah,
Awesome.
definitely, definitely. I'm very stoked I made this decision for myself. It has affected me not only in my physical life, but in my personal, just the way I even I carry myself. So it's been amazing. I recommend it. I love to show up for myself and also be held accountable too. So that
Yeah.
is really
We
nice.
all need that, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm stoked. Anybody, feel free.
Awesome. Thanks, Maria. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording, but thanks for chatting with us.